Welcome back to Rounding the Bases Extra Innings. Joel Goldberg, Tina Youngblood. All right, Tina, we talked in the podcast, and I encourage everybody to check out the audio version wherever you get your podcast. There's a lot of great stuff on there. But way back when, before you went to turning around companies all over the world, you were a professor, accounting. What type of professor were you?
I was, you mean personality-wise?
Yeah, what was your style?
My students would tell you I was tough but fair. And those are their words, not mine. I was a tough professor because, I taught at Miami of Ohio, as I mentioned. It's top 5, top 10 accounting program in the country. And I'd often say to my students, your parents are spending a fortune to send you to school here. So I want you to actually learn something. I'm not going to crack your head open and pour the stuff in and then have you regurgitate it to me in a multiple choice exam. That's not me. So if you want an easy A, go take it from somebody else. If you want to learn something, come join me. And so I was tough, but I was also fair in that if I ever had an exam where the average was 70 or the highest score was 72, I would go, that's on me. And that means I pushed you too hard. So I didn't grade on a curve per se, but I would look at myself and go, okay, you did something wrong there because you've got smart people in this room. And so if there weren't some really good, strong test scores, then I knew it was on, that was my fault. And I went back and I tried to help. And then the other thing I think people would say is I cared about my students, in an authentic way, in a true way. I had people, I still have a couple that even these many years later, I just did a Zoom call with one of my former students who's become an entrepreneur and just an incredible success story. And he still keeps in touch with me. So that's been one of the joys of my life, is spending that time with the 18 to 21 year olds, because you learn a lot from them.
And I think, and I know that a lot of what you did as a professor then translated into becoming a leader and running companies, and a lot of similarities in terms of expectations and people and managing people and listening and all of that too. So I think we could draw a direct line to that. My second question, as we round the bases here, let's just throw a shout out to some of my favorite people and one of your great groups, Women Who Mean Business. I've asked other guests on my show about this. I don't know how unique that is to where you're at now, Kansas City, but I know that it is just a ridiculous collection of Tina Youngbloods and women from all different fields that are power forces in whatever they do too. How much, not just fun, but how unique is this group?
It's the most unique group of any humans, not just women, I've ever been a part of. I was lucky that I got elected. I got in my first try, which I didn't realize was a big deal. But these women are incredibly supportive. I've never met a group of people more supportive than this group. When we get together, we don't talk shop. We don't talk about business. We just, how is your family? We are there for each other when a family member passes. We're there for each other when somebody has a baby. We're just there for each other all the time. But what comes out of that often is, oh, and by the way, I want to do business with you. And like I said, I told you earlier, I think it's the most incredible group. And I have done some amazing things. It's interesting. I was having breakfast with one of our board members a couple months ago who didn't realize that, because I don't talk about it a lot, but didn't realize I was in this particular class with his daughter, because we don't talk about it. And when he found out, he goes, oh, you're a powerhouse. Like, this is a force to be reckoned with, you women. And I go, well, I guess maybe we are. He goes, I think when this Women Who Mean Business group rallies or gets their minds wrapped around something they want to accomplish, they'll get it done, and they'll get more done than any other group. And I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's true. We're a formidable group of people who happen to be nice people too.
Yeah, I can attest to all of that. Obviously, I'm not in the group, newsflash here, but so many people that I know, and they're all amazing people and just absurdly accomplished in life in each of their professions. And so that was about as good a softball question as you're going to get, but an important one, I think, to recognize that group. My third question will be a little bit lighthearted because you did grow up with some of that farm life background, and my notes here say this. I'm just going to read this. Okay, this is, my assistant Ashley does an unbelievable job with her research. I'm just going to read this and then I'll let you fill in the blanks. Has churned butter from a cow that she milked and also used an outhouse. Grew up in Tennessee next door to her grandparents' farm that didn't have electricity or running water until 1975. I love when I get tidbits like this because I've never asked anybody else that question. It's very unique to you. I'm not saying you're the only one. Tell me about that background.
Well, what's funny is now that I live in the Midwest, people go, big whoop,
Not me.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on a farm too. Big whoop. No. So, born in Nashville, Tennessee, but raised on a very small town. And we did live on my grandparents' farm, built a house on an acre that my grandfather gave us. But yeah, they didn't have running water. They didn't have electricity. And this was, I was born a long time ago, but in 1965, everybody had electricity, right? And but one of the things that I think I learned from that, and that shapes who you are, is my grandmother. I was very close to my grandmother. She was an amazing woman, very tough woman. But yeah, she had one Jersey cow and about 12 other cows, and my grandfather was just a small farmer. We did tobacco and hay and things like that, and eggs. We had chickens. But yeah, so she was making butter once, and I visited her every day. I'd come home from school and I'd walk up to her back door and I'd walk in, and she was like, well, you can help me do it. And she taught me how to do it. She taught me how to draw water, from a well, and using the outhouse was by far, before we built our house and we would go and visit, I'd be like, this can't be, 1975, but in fact it was. So yeah, little known fact, that I came from very, very humble beginnings. And that was part of the journey to, my grandmother said, she's part of the reason I have a PhD, because she was like, you just keep getting your education. She thought I was a smart kid. And she was like, you keep getting your education because no one can ever take that away from you. And I think she made it to the 5th grade. So stuck with me.
It's amazing, incredibly inspirational. I've been in the Midwest for a lot of years, over 35 years, and I have zero farming skills, never will. And actually growing up in the suburbs of Philadelphia before moving to Chicago, in my small town, there were actually a lot of farms out there. And so I remember having a grade school friend that grew up on a farm, and it was only a couple miles from our house. I mean, you could, depending on which way the wind was blowing, you could smell where the farm was. And so that was the closest I had to it. I'm pretty sure that town now is all those farms are gone and it's mansions and things like that. But anyway, that's as close as I got. So I did not have that background, unlike a lot of other people in the Midwest. Last question, my walk-off. We'll go more hard hitting here, because I know that you're a problem solver. I know that you have an expertise in rebuilding companies and people and culture. And there are a lot of different answers on this. And I didn't tell you that I was going to ask this, but I just want to pick your brain on it. We are in a time right now that we've never experienced before, meaning that the option of working from home is out there, whether companies are embracing it or not, fully, partially, not at all. It's in the minds of potential employees everywhere, especially younger generation, but not all younger generation. How do we navigate this? Because if it's all about people, and it's all about taking care of our people, and it's all about getting everybody on the same page, but we have different expectations now of how that looks, how do you navigate it?
That is your $64,000 question. I mean, it's hard, Joel. I am a huge believer, as you know, I'm all about people and culture, and it's hard to create culture on Zoom. It really is. For me, you have to navigate it carefully. I'm lucky enough that we have a hybrid work environment. So, you can go into the office every day if you want. You can go in 2 or 3 days a week if you want. I think one important way to navigate it is not to try to put a rule around it. And I say that because as soon as you put a rule in place, people will figure out how to get around it, right? They'll find loopholes, and you don't want that. You want people to be productive, and you want people to be engaged in their work. So for me, it's a lot of soft skills. I mean, and there's not an easy answer to it. I have people that came to work for us because they could work from home 2 days a week. And, now in the lab where we're killing bugs and silencing gene targets, you have to be in the lab. So we try to do it other ways. We let them we have pizza parties, and we kind of let them go take a day and go to the botanical gardens and those kinds of things where they still get to experience being around each other. And those of us that are more hybrid, I do ask them to come in sometimes, and I'll just say, hey, can we get together in the conference room Tuesday? Because I want to really talk about this issue. So it's budget time, or it's, big board presentation time, or it's tackling a problem. We get together. And people don't mind doing that when you don't overdo it, right? When you don't say, you must be in the office from 8 to 5 every day. I've never been a subscriber to that philosophy. I was a professor, for heaven's sake,
Yeah.
I got tenure. Some of my friends used to tease me and go, well, you only work 2 days a week, because I taught Tuesdays and Thursdays. They didn't think I did anything Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I was like, well, you have to get tenure by writing a lot, and sometimes you need a quiet space to write. So I've always been of that mindset that if you get your work done, I really don't care where you do it. But sometimes I want you to be with me so that I can look you in the eye. We can sit across the table from each other. We can whiteboard an issue. We can tackle a problem. And then, by the way, let's go have dinner, or let's go have lunch, or, grab a cup of coffee or something. That's where I think you can navigate, is by saying, okay, fine, meet me at Starbucks in Prairie Village. Let's do it. You don't have to be in an office. You can just meet somewhere, and you can be in yoga pants, and a sweatshirt, and nobody cares. So
Great.
Yeah, that's my view.
Yeah. And I think I asked it just because I like to learn and listen, because everybody has a little something different. And I think we all can learn from each other too. What works in terms of what you just said may not totally work for someone else, but anybody that's watching this may say, hey, wait a minute, I just pulled something from there. What if I were to do this? I mean, I said something to a CEO recently who, like so many others, is, really fixated on how do we get them to come into the office? And I kind of tried to turn it upside down and said, instead of focusing so much on how to get them in the office, just do some great things in the office and they might come. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, if we do this, will you do that? Just do it. Just do it and make that office a better place. Make that office somewhere where you create some buzz, and maybe they want to come in, but they don't feel like they're being forced to at that point. Agreed. And because we keep trying to set these, as you said, these rules, or trying to change the rules. Yeah. But maybe we just change the expectation. And I know that's very vague, but I just think, and back to what you said in the audio version of the podcast, that we've got to challenge things a little bit and challenge the status quo. Where we're at right now, to me, feels like we're in transition, and I don't know where it's going, but I don't think we're at that final place, if there is such a thing. But I think at some point we're going to kind of come out of this fog and reestablish some new norms.
I agree with you. And I think that is it. You have to be adaptive. You've got to be agile, right? And, a lot of people who say, how do we get them back in the office, maybe are from an older generation where that was expected. And again, if you take a different approach to what your expectations are, change your expectations, but keep in mind, you got to have results, you got to win, but you'll figure it out.
This has been great. I knew it would be. Again, I want to encourage everybody to check out the audio version of the podcast with Tina Youngblood, wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Rounding the Bases with Joel Goldberg. You could check out her company, TechAccel.net, to learn more about them. And Tina, appreciate all the time.
This was so much fun. Thanks, Joel.